Drive Time on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Zurich. We believe small actions can have great impact. Take a small action today. Speak to a financial broker about a Zurich pension.
We all know the airline industry is not short of colourful chief executives, and we're going to hear now from one of the most prominent. Alan Joyce was born and raised in Tallaght in Dublin. After 8 years at Aer Lingus, he joined the Australian airline Qantas, where he's been chief executive for 12 years. His leadership at Qantas has been controversial, though, and at perhaps the toughest time in the industry's history, he's been telling me about the scale of the pandemic-related troubles his airline faces.
Yeah, pretty like every airline, pretty severe. So our financial year ends on the 30th of June, and in the last financial year we lost $4 billion in revenue, and this financial year we're thinking we're going to lose at least $10 billion of what was an $18 billion business, and that's meant that we've had to make some unbelievably tough decisions. We've stood down up to 25,000 of our employees. We're having to make at least 6,000 redundant. We've grounded just about most of our fleet, parked some aircraft like the big A380s for at least 3 years, and the list goes on. Unfortunately, there's a lot of action needed to make sure that we survive this and we come out of this strong and with the ability to grow again once we get through COVID-19.
And isn't it true that most, or many airlines at least, simply won't survive this?
Yeah, IATA, the peak body, believes we won't get back to 19 traffic levels till 2024, and for the next few years there's going to be massive losses in the aviation industry. One commentator who's pretty well known here in Australia, Pierre Harbison, believes up to 40% of airlines could go bankrupt. So
40?
Yeah, up to 40.
Would you agree with that?
I don't think it'd be as bad as that, but I do think we're going to see, we've seen a lot of airlines going into bankruptcy, or major competitor here went into administration. We've seen Virgin Atlantic go into administration. We've seen LATAM go into administration. So it's already starting to happen. And that's why I think you need to act fast, take the actions that are needed to make sure you survive. And Qantas has been out there raising financing against aircraft that bought with cash. We raised equity. We've given ourselves $4.5 billion in liquidity, and we've cut our cash burn down, which is an important measure. We're still burning $40 million a week, but compared to a lot of other airlines that are losing hundreds of millions of dollars a week, that gives us the ability in the current environment, so there's no vaccine and nothing changes, to last well into 2022. And what we're seeing here in Australia is probably more optimistic than most airlines are seeing around the globe. You know, the cases here in New South Wales and Sydney were down to 0 for the last 2 days. Victoria had a second wave, but they've got the cases down to 5 yesterday. We've seen all of the other states control this, and we're up to already 27-28% of our pre-COVID domestic flying, and we're optimistic by Christmas we'll see our borders opening up in Australia and us flying an extensive schedule, which is unique, I think, around the world.
Can I ask a question on behalf of all the mommies and daddies who have children and relatives all around the world, in Australia, in the Middle East and so on? An awful lot of those people, because again of the pandemic, decided not to come home and during summertime. They left it till Christmas. Now there's a big question mark if people will travel home at Christmas as well because of the pandemic. How quickly do you see air travel, international aviation, getting back to normal? Will it be done for Christmas, Alan?
Well, we're hoping for a lot of our operation to get it up and running domestically, but we're in a unique position, as I said, where we have very low levels of the virus. What we're trying to do as an industry body is put in place testing that would allow people, hopefully rapid testing, so we can get people tested before they get on aircraft, understand whether people are virus-free, and then use testing to reduce the amount of time people, or maybe eliminate it, that people are in quarantine. That's one of the plans we're trying to work on here in Australia. And there's some very good technical developments in the testing regime, which hopefully we start seeing running out before Christmas and helping with that. If not, it'll be early in the new year. We need to show that we can test, trace before we get the international borders opening up. And at the moment, we ask everybody to stay 14 days in quarantine in a hotel when they're coming into the country. Not many people are going to do that unless they have to do it, and that needs needs to change in the future for international travel to be economic again.
Okay. Before this interview, Alan, I was thinking a little bit about you and somebody in your position in this industry. And we all know that climate change was a big issue in the last election here, but worldwide as well. And it struck me, how can you be a good guy in the airline industry in terms of climate change? It's impossible, isn't it?
No, it's not. I think a lot of airlines now, Qantas was the second airline group in the world after IAG, British Airways, to declare that we'll be carbon neutral as a target by 2050. And now One World is the first alliance, so all the airlines have committed to that target. And there are ways. I mean, we have the largest carbon offset program in the world. 10% of our customers on Qantas.com offset their own carbon emissions.
But you got it in the neck recently, didn't you, because of these sightseeing flights. All flights are grounded, but Qantas decided to bring people who missed flying up around at low altitude, domestic air travel, people around Uluru Rock and the Great Barrier Reef and so on, at reasonable cost. Maybe most people wouldn't pay, but you got it in the neck for that one. Climate activists were saying, what is the need for this?
Yeah, and we had said, which we were doing, is all the carbon on that flight would be offset, again, part of that program. And we said when we were doing the flights with Project Sunrise, so the way we're changing the way we do business is the aircraft that were going to fly direct from London to Sydney to Melbourne, we were building into the price of the aircraft in the business case the cost of carbon for the life of those aircraft, and saying we would fully offset the carbon emissions for those aircraft, which is what people are going to have to do. And there are three ways to getting there. One we have, which is we're very focused on offsetting in the short term with carbon offsets, which are very useful projects that have a number of environmental benefits to them as well. Secondly, we are buying new aircraft technology, which has a big improvement on the amount of CO2 that's pumped in the atmosphere. And thirdly, we're investing very heavily in sustainable aviation fuels, and the belief is by 2050, most of the fuel that we'll be using and the industry will be using will be sustainable. But I've always said you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here, because the positives that air travel have given, particularly for Irish people, I wouldn't be here. Most Irish people wouldn't have been able to leave the country, go around the world, see the world, make a big difference in a lot of different countries, help the Irish economy and have that diaspora and that influence on the rest of the globe. And how do you get this right? Because it does have an impact on the environment. We know a lot of businesses do.
You know an awful lot of climate activists will say the way to get it right is to stop flying. Simply to stop flying unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, I know you don't want to hear that.
But the way, Cormac, to stop all CO2 emission is to let's go back and live in caves and switch off the lights.
Says the CEO of Qantas.
Yeah, but that's the extremity of it. So when you start out, well, we're not going to do that. So then, how do we actually keep the society that we have, keep the benefits that things like air transportation have done, but actually not do damage to the environment? And that's what we're aiming for, and that's what we're doing. Otherwise, if you don't think that's right, go and live in a cave.
Well, I can see now why the media in Australia call you combative, Alan.
Cormac, I mean, we're having a good debate, which is what this is all about, because these things are never black and white. There's always an element of grey, and you actually have to present your case, and you have to actually talk about how you get through these things.
Totally.
That's what's good about.
But do you know what I like about this as well? It's a Dublin Jackie in Australia talking to a culture from Connemara, and the truth of it is, Alan, I now realise why you don't mind being disliked at all. When you saw cash being burned through your sponsorship of Australian rugby, you said, burn it. We end that contract. We don't need it. And that brought you an awful lot of despair in Australia, didn't it?
Well, we did. I mean, unfortunately, like everything, we're revisiting everything that we do. And we had a 30-year sponsorship with the Qantas Wallabies, and we decided that we can't afford these sponsorships, which generate cash, and we decided that we were going to leave that one, which was hard to do with these long-term partnerships. But when you have to make 6,000 people redundant, you can't be affording to pay millions of dollars to have your logo on a jersey. It just doesn't fit to get it right.
Okay, finally, promise me Qantas won't end up sponsoring the Dublin senior football team, going for 6 in a row now.
Well, it would be good sponsorship if you got in there early. I'm a Liverpool fan. It'd be the same thing if I got in and sponsored Liverpool a few years ago. I think it would have been good sponsorship. I'm sure they're very expensive now, Cormac. Which county are you from?
Galway.
Oh, Galway would be very cheap. Galway would be very cheap. I might have a look at a Galway jersey.
You could probably buy Galway. Come here. Alan Joyce, CEO of Qantas. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Cormac.